Let's talk about something most people miss entirely: pattern recognition. It's not some buzzword you throw around in boardrooms. It's the foundation of smart decision making, of prediction, of knowing what's coming next before the data even catches up. And no one, and I mean no one, has better pattern recognition than a woman who's lived through 5 decades of reality, adjusted, survived, and still shows up with clarity. We celebrate machine learning because it learns from data sets. But let's scale that idea up. A woman over 55 has been feeding real-world data into her brain every single day for over half a century. Not simulations, actual inputs: people, systems, relationships, failures, wins, losses, injustice, transformation. She's not just surviving it, she's mapping it. And at some point, she stops reacting to the world and starts predicting it. That's power. This is the kind of intelligence you can't fake. You don't get it from a crash course or some inspirational podcast. You earn it through iterations, through navigating careers that weren't designed for you, raising families with limited support, starting over after loss, managing the health of aging parents while recalibrating your own identity in real time. That kind of operating system doesn't just come with resilience, it is resilience. We underestimate how much energy the world demands from women over 55. But here's the flip: they've learned how to allocate it better than anyone else. Efficiency isn't a theory for them. It's survival turned into strategy. They know which battles are worth fighting, which voices are worth listening to, and which systems are too broken to waste time on. You think that's soft skill. It's not. It's elite level signal processing. And you know what happens when you combine resilience with pattern recognition? You get velocity. Not the frantic kind, real momentum. Because once they lock onto something, they don't need to second guess. They've already run the simulations. They've seen what happens when you act too soon or too late. They're not paralyzed by possibilities. They're tuned to probability. That's a weapon in any arena: business, science, politics, anything. This isn't just about age. This is about compounded experience, the kind of depth that can't be Googled, the kind of emotional and strategic intelligence that comes from building something over time, not just scaling fast, but sustaining. They've been through the noise. Now they operate in signal. And in a world drowning in chaos, that makes them the clearest thinkers in the room. So next time someone talks about innovation, or leadership, or impact, and they ignore the women who've been through 5 decades of real life iteration, understand this: they're not just missing the point. They're missing the entire operating system. Let's get into something that makes absolutely zero sense, and yet it's happening every day across every major market. Women over 55 control more than half of global consumer wealth. Read that again. Not a fraction. Not a niche. The majority. They hold the purchasing power. They write the checks. They influence the decisions in every vertical, from healthcare to real estate to tech. They're not just part of the economy. They are the economy. And somehow industries are still acting like they don't exist. How does that happen? How do you have the most financially powerful demographic in human history? People with money, time, and influence. And the system still markets to them like they're irrelevant, invisible, or worse, outdated? It's a complete failure of logic, and more importantly, a failure of vision. These are people who aren't just spending money. They're investing it, reallocating it, compounding it. They're helping their kids launch businesses. They're funding startups. They're buying property. They're taking control of their retirement, healthcare, and lifestyle decisions with surgical precision. They're not dabbling, they're optimizing. And the companies ignoring them are literally leaving trillions on the table. You want growth, you want scale. Stop chasing attention from audiences who scroll past you in half a second and start listening to the group that's actually making decisions. They don't just buy products, they build loyalty. They don't click for dopamine, they commit for value. They don't care about your hype. They care about whether your solution actually works. The myth is that the power lies in youth. The truth is the power lies in assets. Wealth isn't about who's trending, it's about who's owning. And women over 55, they're owning, quietly, consistently, with precision. While the world's busy chasing virality, they're building generational value. They're not renting power, they're holding it. So here's the paradox. The most powerful consumer force is also the most underserved. That's not just disrespectful, that's stupid. If any other demographic held this level of financial influence, the market would have bent over backwards a decade ago. But because they're not loud, because they're not performing for likes, they get ignored. That's not a market issue. That's a perception glitch. And that's where everything changes. Because they're done waiting. They're building their own platforms, their own brands, their own ecosystems. They're funding each other, supporting each other, redefining what influence looks like without asking for permission. They're not trying to be seen anymore. They're seeing each other, and that changes the entire economic map. So if you're in business and still targeting yesterday's customer while ignoring today's owner, you're not innovating. You're falling behind fast. Because the future doesn't just belong to who has the best idea. It belongs to who actually holds the power. And in case no one told you, that's her. Let's kill the myth right now. Real power doesn't need applause. It doesn't need followers. It doesn't beg for likes, retweets, or empty headlines. Real power builds quietly, efficiently over time. And no one embodies that more than women over 55. These are people who've stopped chasing external validation because they've already proven everything they needed to prove to themselves. Everyone else is just catching up. You want to know what lasting value looks like? Watch a woman who's been through 2 or 3 reinventions in her life, career shifts, family pivots, health resets, global upheavals, and still shows up with energy and focus. She's not here to impress you. She's here to get results. She's seen hype cycles come and go. She's seen trends explode and vanish in a single quarter. So she doesn't invest in the temporary. She builds what lasts. That's the difference. While the rest of the world is obsessed with speed, virality, and short-term wins, she's playing a longer game. The compounding effect of time, discipline, and perspective, that's her advantage. She doesn't flinch when the market shakes. She's been through worse. She knows that resilience beats flash every single time. Validation, she stopped needing it 20 years ago. When you've been told no more times than you can count, and you kept going anyway, you develop a kind of internal engine. You don't wait for approval, you execute. And while others burn energy trying to be seen, she's making decisions that shape futures. That's not ego. That's clarity, and clarity is the new currency. In a world drowning in noise, she's filtering for signal. She's asking sharper questions. She's not impressed by surface. She wants substance, real value, tangible outcomes. That's how she operates. Not because it looks good, but because it works. This is the person who doesn't just write a check. She asks where the money's going. She doesn't just support a cause. She drives accountability. She doesn't need you to like her. She needs to know the mission is real. And when she commits, she's all in. No drama. No press release. Just impact. While others are branding themselves, she's mentoring quietly. She's investing wisely. She's building businesses that don't just scale. They last. And the best part, she's doing it without asking for the spotlight. She's creating value that won't need a rebrand in 6 months. That's the kind of legacy mindset most people never even reach. So here's what the world needs to understand: hype fades. Attention shifts. But the structures that actually move the needle are being built by people who've stopped trying to go viral and started focusing on what matters. And leading that charge are women who have no time for the performative and every reason to build something permanent. They don't need noise, they need traction. And they're already way ahead. Let's get one thing clear. Leadership is broken in most places. Too much ego, too many people posturing instead of producing. But there's a group that leads differently. Smarter, calmer, with intent, not noise. That's women over 55. You want to know what real leadership looks like? Study them. We've been conditioned to associate leadership with being the loudest voice in the room. But the truth, volume doesn't equal vision. And ego doesn't drive results, execution does. These women have figured that out because they've lived through enough cycles to know how the game actually works. They don't need to dominate. They don't need to be first. They just need to be right, and they usually are. Start with emotional intelligence. It's not a buzzword. It's the baseline for leading teams, navigating conflict, building alliances, and reading the room before it even speaks. And nobody reads the room better than a woman who's spent decades balancing logic and instinct. She's seen every shade of politics, corporate, family, social. She's not just reacting, she's managing energy, recalibrating dynamics, and keeping everything aligned while others are still trying to figure out what just happened. That emotional clarity gives her a strategic edge. And with it comes patience, strategic patience, which is a whole different game. She's not interested in sprinting just to show motion. She's watching, planning, letting the noise burn itself out. She moves when the move matters. She doesn't fall for hype or urgency traps. She's optimizing for impact, not attention. Most leadership gets derailed because people get addicted to the mirror. How do I look? How do I sound? How do I come across? But she's already over that. She's not building for applause. She's building for outcome. There's no ego in her strategy. Just precision. Just delivery. Execution is everything. And this is where she's lethal. Because she doesn't just have ideas, she has systems. She's done the work. Repeated it. Refined it. She knows how to pull people together, make decisions under pressure, hold vision through chaos, and land the plane every time. That's not charisma. That's mastery. She doesn't need to take credit. She doesn't need to dominate the headlines. She's not chasing external validation. She's too busy delivering. And while others are wrapped in self-image, she's producing outcomes that speak for themselves, quietly, effectively, with zero wasted motion. So here's what the world needs to absorb. If you want leadership that actually works, leadership that scales, sustains, and doesn't collapse under pressure, it's already here. It's in the woman who doesn't need to raise her voice to shift the outcome. She just shows up, reads the variables, and executes like it's second nature. That's not traditional leadership. That's evolved leadership. And it's what we should have been building around all along. Let's drop the outdated narrative that innovation belongs to the young. It doesn't. Innovation belongs to the driven. And right now, some of the most driven people on the planet are women over 55, starting businesses, mentoring the next wave of talent, investing with surgical precision, and redefining what success even means. This isn't a slow trickle. It's a movement. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. These women aren't entering business to prove anything. They've already done that. They're building because they see gaps, and they've lived long enough to know no one else is going to fill them properly. So they do it themselves. They're not fantasizing about change. They are the change. On their own terms, on their own timeline, with zero interest in playing by rules that were never built for them in the first place. They're launching companies from lived insight, not theory. They don't need to guess what the market wants. They are the market. They've seen the failures, survived the trends, outlasted the noise, and now they're cutting through all of it with models that are built to last. No fluff, no filler, just efficient, purpose-built businesses that actually solve problems. And they're not keeping the blueprint to themselves. They're mentoring directly, not on stages, not through filters, in real time, in real conversations. They're passing down experience that isn't in any textbook or podcast. Battle-tested strategies, hard-won lessons, the stuff that saves you 5 years of mistakes if you're smart enough to listen. It's a whole different level of knowledge transfer, personal, sharp, unfiltered. Then there's the investment angle. This is where it gets dangerous, in a good way. They're not just putting money in, they're backing visions that align with values. They're investing in people, in ideas that reflect where the world should be going, not just where the numbers say it's safe. They're changing the game behind the scenes, founding capital, angel rounds, funding initiatives that would have been ignored without them. And they don't define success the way the system taught us. They've already chased the titles, the metrics, the external badges of honor. They've seen the emptiness in that. Now, success is impact. Success is freedom. Success is building something that creates value without needing to be loud about it. And they're doing exactly that. They don't want to be mascots. They want to move markets. And they are. This is what happens when time, talent, and purpose align. When someone has nothing to prove and everything to contribute. And they're not waiting to be invited into the future. They're designing it. So while most of the world is still distracted by youth, fueled disruption fantasies, the real builders, the ones with capital, clarity, and conviction, are already at work. They just don't need your permission. They've outgrown that a long time ago. Here's something we need to stop ignoring: the world is changing faster than most people can process. Tech is evolving by the minute. Industries are being disrupted in real time. Entire job categories are disappearing while new ones get created overnight. In this kind of landscape, raw intelligence isn't enough. Speed isn't enough. What you need is adaptability and perspective, and women over 55 have both dialed in. They've lived through more change than most people can even model. They've watched analog become digital, watched AI go from C, fight a daily tool, watched global norms flip on their head multiple times. And they didn't just survive that, they adapted while building through it. Careers, families, systems, everything. That's not luck, that's capacity. You don't get fazed by change when your entire life has been a case study in navigating it. You don't flinch when the next wave hits. You lean in because you've already surfed bigger ones. These women have watched the rise and fall of paradigms that younger generations still think are permanent. So when disruption comes, they don't panic. They assess, they recalibrate, and they move forward, smarter, not louder. That's the edge. While everyone else is scrambling to keep up, they're already mapping the terrain. They've built the muscle to pivot without ego. They've shed identities before, reinvented themselves, started over more than once. They don't see change as a threat. They see it as a new set of tools. And that's where perspective kicks in. Because this isn't just about being flexible, it's about being wise. Having context, understanding where patterns lead. They're not just reacting to trends. They're recognizing them for what they are, noise or signal. They can look past the hype and find the core. That's a leadership trait, but even more, it's a survival advantage in a world where most people are still looking for a playbook that no longer applies. They bring time-tested clarity into every decision. Whether it's investing in a new technology, launching a venture in a volatile market, or mentoring someone in a shifting industry, their thinking isn't anchored in panic. It's grounded. Because they've already done the hard resets. They've already had to ask the question, who am I if everything changes? And they've answered it again and again. This is the kind of operating system we need right now. Not brittle expertise that breaks under pressure, but flexible mastery that learns, adapts, and responds with purpose. Not reactive hustle, measured, powerful evolution. So while the narrative still tries to crown the newest, youngest disruptor every week, the real backbone of progress, the ones capable of steering through rapid transformation without losing their grip, are women who've already reinvented themselves more times than the market can count. They are fluent in change, and in a world that won't slow down, that makes them the most equipped humans on the planet. Everyone's obsessed with the next big thing, the next breakthrough, the next wave, the next headline-making disruption. But here's the uncomfortable truth: the most powerful force on Earth isn't something new, it's not coming. It's not already here. It's been here. Just operating so effectively, so consistently, and so far under the radar that most people completely missed it. I'm talking about women over 55, not as a trend, not as a demographic blip, as a long-standing, underestimated, massively under-leveraged source of influence, intelligence, and momentum. While everyone else has been distracted by flash and noise, they've been quietly doing the real work, building value, driving economies, shaping culture, redefining leadership, not for credit, but for impact. Let's get real, we're talking about people who've spent decades adapting to environments that weren't built for them, navigating systems that excluded them, and instead of waiting for those systems to change, they changed themselves. They didn't complain, they evolved, quietly, relentlessly. And that evolution became power. It's not loud, it's not marketed, but it's everywhere, it's in the investments they make, the companies they run, the families they've raised, the crises they've navigated, the communities they've held together, the revolutions they've initiated without hashtags or headlines. This isn't a recent development. It's decades in the making. What's changing now is simple: the world is finally starting to notice. But here's where people still get it wrong. They think this is just some kind of late career renaissance. It's not. This isn't a comeback. It's a reveal. The power's always been there. The clarity, the strategy, the depth, it's been operating in plain sight, just not in the places you were trained to look. We've been conditioned to recognize dominance, not influence, noise, not presence. But while the world applauded those who shouted the loudest, these women were making real moves, shifting wealth, redefining success, setting new standards without asking for recognition. That's not accidental. That's a system they built for themselves because the original one failed to include them. And now the timing is perfect. The world is unstable, systems are cracking, people are desperate for direction. Not hype, not charisma, but actual grounded vision. That's exactly what they bring. No posturing, no guesswork, just leadership that's been tested across decades of real life. They've been underestimated so long that most people still don't realize they're leading from every angle: economically, socially, culturally, even technologically. The irony: the future isn't being invented by who you think. It's being quietly engineered by the people you forgot to measure. The ones who never asked for permission, never needed validation, and never fit the narrative. But they don't need the narrative anymore. They are the force behind it. So if you're still waiting for something big to emerge, you're too late. The most powerful shift in modern history isn't coming. It's already moving. And it's been led this whole time by women the world tried to overlook. You can't ignore it anymore. They've already rewritten the playbook. So here we are, standing at the intersection of perception and reality. For decades, the world looked past this force. Not because it wasn't powerful, but because it didn't demand attention. It didn't need to. It just kept building, adapting, executing, and leading, without applause, without permission, and without pause. Women over 55 aren't stepping into power. They've been in power, quietly shaping industries, culture, families, economies. Now, the volume's just getting turned up. This isn't about representation. It's about recognition. About aligning innovation with wisdom, capital with purpose, and influence with depth. Because the future doesn't belong to whoever shouts the loudest. It belongs to the ones who've already done the work, seen the cycles, and stayed standing through all of it. You want stability in chaos. You want clarity in noise. You want momentum that doesn't burn out in a quarter. Start here. Start with the most experienced, most resourceful, most undervalued operators on the planet. They're not asking to lead. They already are.